evening and welcome. Well, I hope you picked the right horse in the Derby. If you didn't, don't despair. There could still be a win on the cards because a fabulous weekend in Wigan could be yours if you're the sender of Britain's most boring postcard. Now, here are some of the contenders. The Post Office, Basingstoke. Sunnybank Road, Greetland. University Arms, Cambridge. That's nice. And the M1 by day. Well, those are just some of the cards that Terry sent us from his coach tour. And if you're watching, Terry, next time, please put a stamp on. Now, later, I'll be talking to Judge James Pickles and looking back over his somewhat controversial career, which isn't finished yet. Next week, in a byline documentary, he'll be advocating that all drugs are legalized, and I'll be hearing why later. Music tonight comes from rocker Lenny Kravitz, but now to my first guest. A decade ago, he achieved both fame and critical acclaim with his performance as Sebastian Flight in the television classic Brideshead Revisited. Recently, he spent 3 months in Russia, shooting a film in which he was the only English-speaking member of the cast. The film's called Lost in Siberia. It's the harrowing tale of an Englishman sentenced to 10 years in a concentration camp. He's literally flown here to join me, so please welcome Anthony Andrews.
Wow, what a welcome.
Yes, exactly. Now, first of all, tell us, where did you fly from?
I flew all the way from Epsom.
Epsom, explain.
Well, I was very privileged to be asked to be attending today's derby, which was a tremendous race.
Oh, and did you win?
I didn't. Georgina did, my wife. She backed the winner, which was a last-minute decision, and the best possible way to do it, because she walked down to the paddock, stared a horse in the eyes and said, "You're for me," and ran back to put money on it. Was successful.
Perhaps she psyched the horse.
I think she probably did.
You're crazy about horses, aren't you?
Well, she certainly is. Yes, I am. We all are.
You ride, don't you?
Yes, I ride quite a bit. But not like that. I mean, I've got a great ambition that one of these days, I will look along that great green turf and ride in a race. Oh. That'll be something else entirely. But I mean, we just mess around with horses, really. Georgina's more the professional than I am.
Anthony, tell me, because it's just something I just long to hear about, Lost in Siberia. Can you give me just a thumbnail sketch of what the story's about?
Yes, it's difficult to thumbnail sketch anything to do with Russia, but it was, for me, an extraordinary event, because I just don't know why.
Just tell me the story of the film first, because we've got a clip, and I'd just like you to sort of elucidate.
The story is about an Englishman who finds himself literally lost in the Stalinist gulag system of the late 40s, early 50s. And the reason that it's constructed that way is that one of the men who wrote the screenplay was called Valery Fried, who did 10 years in a labor camp and met at least 2 Americans who were in fact lost in the system. And so when it came to putting together this film, he decided that one of the best ways to take it to the West was to see it through Western eyes, through the eyes of an Englishman.
Well, look, we've got a clip, so let's have a look at it now. This is all going to look a bit... You look so different. You look really ill and gaunt. How?
I lost about, I suppose, about 25 pounds in the course of shooting the movie. It was 5 months that I was in Russia, on and off. I built in, thankfully, some holidays because I really needed them. And he gave me the chance to come back and see the family.
How did you lose that weight? Because you're a thin man in any case. You didn't have it to lose, did you?
Well, I mean, the only way to do it is to stop eating. I thought, when I got to Russia, I really thought I was a thin man. I mean, I'd worked very hard. I mean, I sometimes go on a bit of a diet before I shoot any movie, but this time I tried very hard. And I arrived there and felt like a pudding face by comparison to all the people that he'd surrounded me with wonderful faces, wonderful, serious Russian, gaunt faces. And I knew instantly that I had a lot of work to do.
You were shooting about 400 miles north of Moscow, is that right?
Correct.
Was it very bleak there?
Yes, it was. It was a place called Yaroslavl, where they built the replica of the camp in such detail, I might say, that one of the advisors that we had working on the film with us actually suffered a breakdown when he saw the camp, because he believed he would never have to set eyes on it again.
And it was so realistic.
It really was, and I think it worried a lot of the locals when they were building it too. I mean, they really did feel that...
How did you get on with the local people? You managed to speak a little Russian, is that right?
Well, falteringly. I mean, as you can see from the clip, I mean, little bits and pieces. I mean, one of the amusing things there were lots of very depressing tales, which I won't bore you with about the movie, but one of the amusing things about it is that quite often, when I'd get up in the morning and get to the set, particularly when we were shooting the interiors, which we did back in Moscow, and I'd spend my time in one corner of the set, desperately, frenetically writing out the Russian words in English so I could sound vaguely as if I knew what I was talking about. And you'd see the Russians in the other corner, desperately writing out in Russian, phonetically, their words in English, so that they sounded like they knew what they were talking about. And we'd meet in the middle of the floor and have these glamorous conversations, and not one of us understood what the other person was saying. But somehow it worked.
Yes, that's showbiz. This part for you was a very emotional one, wasn't it? How did you... I mean, 4 months is a long time to sustain a long emotional role. How did you cope with that?
Well, I mean, as I said, the nice thing was that I had some breaks, but it was a very long haul, and it's such a... I mean, the great thing for me was to be asked to be a part of recording this vitally important part of Russian history. I mean, the extraordinary thing is that the two great things about the film, I think, from the Russian point of view, is that it's the first time the Russians have been able to make a film about the Stalinist gulags. And it's also the first time the Russians have made a film in English as well as Russian.
In a kind of co-production? Was it a co-production?
No,
it's
not. It's a popular myth, but in fact, it's entirely produced by Russians. Everything about it was Russian except me. So it was a great privilege.
Why did they pick you?
I wish I knew the answer to that question. I don't really know. But as I was saying, I'm deeply honoured to have been part of it because, I mean, it had to be recorded. And I think that Alexander Mita, who directs this film extremely well, would be terribly pleased if he thought that there was any possibility of its contributing towards preventing situations like this happening, as indeed they do.
It's a huge jump away from Brideshead, isn't it?
It sure is.
Is that quite a relief?
Yes, I think it's an enormous relief. I've been trying to bury Sebastian for many years. He still won't die.
No, of course he won't, because you're so good. Now, you turned down, am I right in thinking, a huge part in a soap opera in America. Why was that?
Well, it wasn't so much that I turned it down, it's just that it became impractical for me to do. It was something I really wanted to do. I desperately wanted to make a comedy, and this was a comedy series. It was best described as a contractual misunderstanding, basically because I wanted to be at home near the family. And it's very difficult. I mean, I know how much we have to travel and how much we have to spend time away from the family anyway. And for me to spend what could have easily turned into a commitment of 5 years away from home, traveling all the time, was ridiculous.
You didn't want to ship your family out there?
No, because the reason for this was that the reason I wanted to do it was because it was very clearly going to be a European-based show and based out of London. It turned out not to be that, so that was difficult for me.
Do you think that people over there still admire and love the English accent, or have we sort of peaked out there? They always used to think it was rather marvellous to speak like that, and they all imitate us, but...
Well, they certainly are. I mean, they were wild about Jeremy when he was doing his very English performance in his Oscar-winning performance, so I don't think we've quite run out of time yet.
Well, we've been jolly lucky to have you on the show, catching you just between kind of flitting here and there.
Well, bless you for asking.
Thank you so much for coming, Anthony, and good luck with the film. I hope it'll make a huge success for you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed.
Isn't she wonderful at this? I saw on Monday night. I think you're fantastic at it.
Oh, he's a fool.
Thank God.
Thank you very much indeed. Anthony Andrews. Well, now we've got some fantastic music from a band making their first appearance on Wogan. With It Ain't Over Till It's Over, welcome the dazzling Lenny Kravitz. thank you, Lenny, in some fairly serious trousers. Now to a man who's no stranger to controversy, and no stranger to this programme either. In his 15 years as a judge, he has persistently broken all the rules. As he prepares to retire from the bench, the jury is still out on his career, but the verdict is likely to be guilty of plain speaking. In next Tuesday's Byline documentary, he puts his neck on the line once more when he presents his case for the legalisation of drugs. Welcome, please, Judge James Pickles.
You're quite wrong in saying I've broken all the rules. Of course I haven't broken all of them. I've broken one or two which had to be broken. And in one particular case, I was found to be right when I opposed Lord Hailsham over the Kilmuir rules. His successor, Lord Mackay, abolished them. I haven't broken them all.
No, I'm sorry about that.
For most of the time, I've been a normal judge whom nobody knew about. I'm not trying to be cross with you, no, don't think that. But it was only after I'd been on the bench for many years that anybody outside West Yorkshire heard of me. And the reason for that was because a certain gentleman threatened to sack me. But yes, I haven't been entirely conventional, you're right about that.
Do you think your superiors will be sad to see you go?
Oh, they'll be glad, of course they will, yes. And so shall I.
You'll be glad to leave?
Yes, I've had enough. I've done it for so long. I've been in the law for 42 years. I've been sitting on the bench, part-time and full-time, for 28 years. And it's time for other things like this programme.
Do you think you've been a good judge? Just before we start on things like this programme, have you been a good judge?
I've been a modest one, and therefore I'm not going to answer your question.
Do you regret any of the judgments you made?
There's no point in regretting things, is there? One looks forward.
Would you have changed anything?
One or two things in a small way, but if you're going to ask me about certain notorious ladies whom I had to deal with, and I'm not prepared, A, I'm not prepared to deal with them in detail, but B, I was misunderstood.
Can you explain that? Because I think that maybe, do you feel that you were quoted out of context?
No, the press got it wrong. I haven't, and indeed, I haven't said this before, and I'm going to say it now with restraint. Certain people above me, Lord Lane being one, had it in for me to a degree. It'll all be explained in detail. He's basically a good man and a fair man, but there are things to be said, which I'm going to say in due course. I'm writing a book which hopefully will come out at Christmas. I can't plug it because it's not published yet, and I suppose in theory it may never be. But that's the place where, in detail, I shall explain these matters, and I can't do so briefly now.
People have accused you of being a male chauvinist. Do you think that's fair?
It's most unfair. Anybody who knows me, and you don't, we've only had 2 words before the programme started. By the end, you may have a better, or maybe worse, opinion of me, I don't know. I would say, in my own defence, and of course I'm biased, that I'm in no way a male chauvinist, or any kind of chauvinist. I hope I'm a fair-minded person, and I'm certainly not anti-women, certainly not.
But a lot of the remarks you've made have seemed to catch the headlines, seem to be in some way critical of women or treating them slightly differently, separately? Look, the way they dress, the way they present themselves?
Well, yes, I have made 1 or 2 remarks about that, but I'm not going to get drawn into that because the press have taken it up and exaggerated 1 or 2 things I happen to say. And I'm a serious-minded person, basically, and I have serious things to say, and I don't think one ought to get sidetracked into those rather frivolous matters.
OK, well, let's drop that. Let's talk now about this film, Byline,
yes,
which you made, which I've seen,
yeah,
in which you make the case for legalising drugs. Can you tell those of us who haven't seen it what you propose? For instance, you've said, I think, that it's people's own right to destroy themselves.
Well, I think basically, yes, an adult should be free to decide what he does with his own body, provided he doesn't harm somebody else who doesn't want to be harmed being an adult. Children, of course, are in a different position. But if I want to abuse my body by taking alcohol, nicotine, or any other drug, that's my decision. If I want to read pornography, whatever effect it might have upon me, that's my decision. If I want to go with a prostitute, which I don't, I never have, and I never will, any more than I've taken drugs or would want to, that's my decision. And in an adult society, the state does not interfere in people's lives and dictate to them in matters of taste and morals. That's my basic view. Applying it to drugs, again, take cannabis, for example. 1 million people in this country are said to have smoked cannabis. I'm not one of them. Now, I never had it offered. When I was a student, nobody ever offered it. What I would have done if they had, I don't know, but it's never arisen. And I certainly know too much about it now to try. But when so many people take a particular substance, why should the law say, oh, no, you're going to go to prison for this? I think it's monstrous. Cannabis never killed anybody. 100,000 people a year in this country die from cigarette smoking. 10,000 from drinking alcohol. 50 to 200 or about die from cocaine and heroin. And most of those, or many of those, because they take impure drugs, which are a byproduct of illegality, and they share dirty needles.
Can you explain about the impure drugs, the argument that you
put forward? Yes, I can. Well, you see, obviously, if I were to go and buy heroin, I can't go to the trading standards people and say, oh, this isn't up to standard, can I? And therefore, the people who sell these things, of course, they put all kinds of things, baking powder, brick dust, and all kinds of things in. And the result is that when you're injecting yourself, you can be killing yourself that way, you see. You see, the point about drugs is this, basically. I can't tell you what's in the whole program, although I think it's a fascinating program.
So do I, incidentally.
I'm very glad. I hope other people will, because it is a serious problem. And there are many people who are getting involved in the drug scene. And the question is, how do we approach it? At the moment, you see, all the effort, and it's costing millions in this country and others, by the customs, the police, courts and prisons, is counterproductive. It doesn't make things any better, it makes things worse. Prices go up because of the illegality. Gangsters move in, and the drugs are imported into the country and pushed. Anybody who gets on to, say, heroin, it can cost £100 a day at street prices. So that person is bound to burgle and to rob and to steal. And a large proportion of property offences in this country are drug-related. And so some way has to be found to deal with this situation. Now, nobody's ever tried in this country legalizing even cannabis, but it's been tried in Amsterdam. I mean, we went to Amsterdam because it's been tried in Holland, where you can buy and smoke, and the film shows people doing it. Mm-hmm. It hasn't led to an explosion of use. In 8, I think it is, states in America, the same things happen. There hasn't been any tremendous increase in the use, and we don't know what would happen with regard to other drugs, but I think we should try and see.
Do you think that the main objection, I'm sure that people are quite prepared to go along with the idea that cannabis is not such a harmful drug, but do you think people are going to take kindly to the idea that you can go into a shop and buy heroin over the counter?
Well, it may not be quite as simple as that. It could be in the end, it could be, but it wouldn't be initially. You see, basically, I don't think there's any point in sending people to prison, although I've had to do it, because I can't change the law, I have to apply it, and I've sent people to prison. And I've realized, the film shows too, whom I had to send. But their places will be immediately filled by others. The profits are so huge that even in those countries where they hang people, it doesn't stop it. People do it. The profits are out of all proportion to one's imagination.
George, can I stop you there? Because I want to introduce at this point a man who's well acquainted with the problems of addiction. He's a consultant psychiatrist in the drug dependency unit of London's Maudsley Hospital, Dr. John Strang. Dr. Strang, what do you feel about Judge Pickles' notion for legalisation of drugs?
Well, I've also been fortunate enough to have seen the programme in advance and to have had an opportunity to discuss it beforehand. I think the first point to be made is I think there is something excellent about the fact that in this country we are able to have such a debate, which includes a range of options, including, I have to say from my point of view, some options that I think are half-baked and mistaken options. But I think it's excellent that debate can occur, because in many other countries, I think it would be unlikely that we would be having this discussion in the States. Having said that, I then think there are flaws in the argument presented by Judge Pickles. A particular point that bothers me is that I think you fail to appreciate the difference between the free choice that people exercise sometimes when they're taking drugs and the states that people get into when they are clearly being driven, when they are addicted to the drug.
Driven by what?
Driven by their addiction to the drug itself.
Yes, but surely the way to treat addicts is in clinics like yours, and it's an excellent one, I've been there, and in hospitals rather than in prisons, isn't it?
Do you not think, though, that we already, those are existing addicts, don't you think that there is a possibility, and I just put it to both of you, that if drugs were more, not necessarily freely available, but were more legally available, the very notion of glamour in drugs, because it's a very glamorous industry, although, of course, you've seen the other side of it, which is about as squalid and depressing, both of you have seen that it would perhaps lure young people into taking more drugs, experimenting more freely?
Well, look, young people are the responsibility of their parents and those people who bring them up. And, of course, they would remain protected, as they are with regard to alcohol and cigarette smoking. But you can't legislate for everybody merely because children are included amongst consumers.
But, Dr. Strang, you feel very strongly about this, don't you?
Well, I'm concerned that we don't get preoccupied with legislation. We're actually talking about the culture in which children, adolescents and young adults find themselves when they're making choices about drug use. We aren't actually talking about, for many of the drugs that we're discussing, we aren't talking about the extreme availability that exists in some other countries. It is a matter of balance that we're needing to achieve. They're not in the same realm as alcohol or tobacco. And whilst I think I'd agree very much with the points that Judge Pickles was making about the comparison with alcohol and tobacco, but numerically we aren't in the same ballpark.
What do you think, Dr. Strang, about breaking down the drugs barons? I mean, America's been pouring money into this, billions of dollars into it, and it's had no effect at all. So, this clearly, I mean, we're all here because we all think drugs are loathsome. And we're really here to debate which is the best way of stopping them. Now, obviously fighting them, literally with machine guns or whatever, that hasn't worked in America. Might this be a way out?
I do think, where I stand very much alongside the points of view from Judge Pickles, is in a shift of emphasis away from a control-dominated strategy. A view that sees machine guns, walkie-talkies or police cars as our strategy is fundamentally flawed. But I do think we need to look at two different levels. Both the judge and I probably deal with the casualties of yesterday's and yesteryear's recreational use. So I would readily agree with looking at diversions from the criminal justice system, steering people so that instead of appearing before Judge Pickles, they appeared before me, so to speak. But one also then needs to consider, what do you do about the broad general public? And my particular worries about legalization is you remove a protective taboo. For many reasons, for many people, one of the reasons why they will not have become involved in drug use is not the law exactly, but the climate of opinion, which is often reflected by the law, in which there is a taboo against use. And there are some very interesting examples. If you look at many of the ethnic minorities in this country, if you look at blacks in London, there is much less injecting of drugs in those groups. And it appears to be because there is a protective taboo, and that breaks down when those groups become more actively integrated.
Well, as you mentioned, blacks in London, there are Afro-Caribbeans in this country whose culture says that there's really nothing wrong with cannabis. And yet they have to be arrested and searched and imprisoned and so on, which makes them anti-police. And that's, again, a strong argument against the present situation. People are put into the criminal system who would otherwise remain outside it. And don't you agree with that, Dr. Strang?
I very happily see a diversion of resources onto, certainly within treatment services, to those drugs which I'm mainly dealing with. I mean, in my day-to-day work, I'm mainly dealing with heroin addicts, a smaller number of people involved with cocaine problems. But it's the balance. And I do think it's a mistake to think that all drugs can be dealt with by the same debates.
I agree.
There are qualitatively different arguments.
And I want to make it clear that I'm not saying there is one simple solution. Let's legalize everything tomorrow. But what I'm saying is we are not winning now. Let's go ahead. Let's discuss it. Let's all get together and deal with this very serious problem and see whether a fresh approach will do better than the existing one. That's really all I'm saying.
So how would you set about legalizing them?
Well, so far as cannabis is concerned, I would say abolish all offences with regard to cannabis tomorrow. Anybody who wants to take it can take it, and that's it.
And can I just check there, Dr. Strang, what would you think about that?
I actually think it's outside my area of expertise. I mean, I don't see significant numbers of people with problems related to cannabis in my clinical work. My main contribution would be on the debate around the other drugs that we've talked about.
So cannabis, take away. Cannabis legal.
Well, now,
Next
if
step.
cannabis legalization didn't lead to a massive increase, I should say, all right, let's proceed then. And let's take, if you like, heroin. And you'd say, all right, you may have to have some kind of a registration system, but hopefully you would, in the end, let the law withdraw from a field where it has no place.
But and this has to be a mistake, I think, where one sees drugs such as heroin and cocaine as sort of products in a marketplace, as commodities, the same as cabbages or caviar. I mean, we're talking about products where the very nature of the substance is that for many people it generates a drive to continue the use.
For centuries, opium was lawful and was widely used in this country. It's only a relatively recent thing that these drugs have become illegal, isn't that right, Dr. Strang?
Yes, but what is different is we aren't talking about opium. I mean, there are opiate drugs
heroin,
like Coughlin disease, which clearly don't lead to the problems. And while pharmacologically, I mean, they're obviously similar or in some sense the same drug, there's something enormously different about the intravenous injection or the rapid intake of one drug compared with a Linctus.
Dr. Strang, if drugs were made legal, you would have surely a much closer watch on the needles that people are using and the actual quality of the drug itself.
Which has an AIDS factor.
Which, of course, has this huge link with AIDS. What would you say to that?
Yeah, I think that at first glance that's a very attractive argument. But then when you try to unlink that argument, it begins to fall apart. Because what one's particularly concerned with on the AIDS front is steering people away from sharing needles and syringes. Now, quite frankly, if they share needles and syringes with the most beautifully pure pharmaceutical heroin, it's every bit as much of a problem. Now, within this country, we've actually were well ahead of many other countries in having needle exchange schemes. We have a large number of community chemists or pharmacists willing to sell needles and syringes. We have a climate which, while not encouraging needle and syringe availability, allows it for those who are continuing to use. That's a more appropriate strategy than seeing the drugs themselves as central.
Don't you prescribe heroin now in the form of methadone as a substitute for heroin?
Well, I think there's an interesting issue there.
Do you prescribe?
Yes, I think there's an interesting issue there in terms of offering substitute programs that lead somebody halfway away from their current state.
But some people say methadone is worse than heroin, and there are some psychiatrists, and one is in the film, who prescribes heroin. Is that right or wrong?
It's certainly right that such people exist. I'm one of them myself, but I would see that as something that was not part of one's main strategy of response. I mean, the inevitable result, as far as I can see, of increased availability, of decreased taboo by legalization, is that you get increased use of the drug. If you look at groups in which those protective taboos have been removed, there's an increased instance of drug problems. My own profession is one of them, because doctors have increased availability, have less of a taboo because one's used to dealing with the drugs. There's a much higher rate of heroin addiction than in the general public.
Cannabis decriminalisation in Holland and America has worked well, has it not?
Well, I think you're actually shifting your ground, you see.
Do you agree, though?
I think you're shifting your ground from a debate about drugs like heroin and cocaine to a debate about cannabis.
Drugs are drugs. There's a number
That's
of
a judge speaking. Drugs are drugs from a legal perspective.
They're not all the same, but they're all drugs.
Judge, leaping off slightly sideways, you've written a play. Is it about drugs?
No, it isn't. It's about a judge, though. And every time I read it, I laugh more. Of course, that may sound wrong, but if I don't think it's funny, why should I expect anybody else to? Incidentally, are you available to take part in it?
Well, please approach my agent.
There's a part for you, I'm sure.
I understand you have an agent. You must be the only judge with
I
an
have
agent.
several agents for various things. It's true. And I'm not going to list them or the agents. But no, maybe you and I could make our fortunes together on the West End, and maybe, I don't know, Hollywood, here we come. What?
But you're there already.
I'm not. You're there. You've made your fortune. I know. I haven't made mine yet.
It's been very kind of you both to come on the programme. Thank you, Dr. Strang. Judge
Thank you.
Pickles, thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Thanks also to Lenny Kravitz and to Anthony Andrews. I'll be back on Friday with music from a special exclusive guest, the divine Miss M, Bette Midler. So good night.
And a reminder that Judge Pickles talks further about his views on drugs in his byline next Tuesday at 10:20 on BBC1.
Curtis, we've got 10 seconds, right, to look good, make people laugh, and tell everybody about Paramount City.
All right, no problem. I'll do it.
Tell them about the comedy from Britain and America.
Yes, okay, yeah.
And the top bands that we're going to have on.
Yeah, all right. Here we go. Ladies and
Too
gentlemen.
late, Curtis. Watch Paramount City.
That's the essence of comedy, that is. Timing. So make sure you're switched on at 10 o'clock, Saturday night, BBC1, for Paramount City.
Breaking and entering in the name of the law is the task facing the team of Police Rescue in 25 minutes here on 1.